let's begin! Table of Tales The Crooked Crown is a tabletop role-playing game. You can play the game with a DualShock controller, 1 Move controller, or 2 Move controllers. When playing with the DualShock, it spawns the same controller as a Move controller does. It's certainly playable, but it doesn't feel natural when moving everything around. 1 Move controller or 2 Move controllers is the best way to play. It doesn't really matter too much if you use 1 or 2, but having 2 just gives you that little bit more extra freedom. The table is found in an attic with a note and key. This setup actually reminded me a little bit of the first Jumanji movie, but board wise, this table is so much more advanced. The board springs to life and blocks appear and disappear at the sides of the table. It's crazy how fluid everything is, especially with so many moving pieces at once. And if you look closely, you can actually see that each block is being raised by a support beam. The level's floor is mainly made up of blocks, because the game does have grid-based gameplay, but the worlds that appear are not limited to a block style. Water appears that looks quite realistic, complete with waves, and walls are often smooth and not of a blocky nature. The depth on the table is absolutely incredible, especially if you are playing on a PlayStation Pro. The objects found in the attic around you do have ever so slightly poorer textures when compared to the table, but honestly, you'll be so engrossed in what is happening on the table right in front of you that you hardly even remember that you're sitting in an attic. A female bird narrates the story to you. It's told in a similar fashion to you, as if you was reading a Dungeons & Dragons book to yourself. She does each of the characters' voices, and although each impression is certainly not the highest of quality, I felt it gave the game a bit more charm and a bit more of a homely feel.
It's Sekvan, Nuna's once loyal servant.
Anointed One, you have returned, and what glorious chaos you have brought us.
He's reveling in the destruction.
Even more so, as she flies around the table and perches on parts of the table's new environments. She certainly plays the part of the game master. You can skip her voiceovers by pressing a button, but a couple of times when I done this, the game just paused and I was unable to progress, which resulted in me having to restart the mission again. It was obviously annoying. To move party members around the board, you simply pick them up and put them down on a new spot, and they do have a physics engine attached. Each one does have an action limit each turn, which applies to both movement and attacks. When moving them, you can see how far they can be placed thanks to the grid-like board raising up. If the character is hovering just above a spot, a footprint will be shown. Although you can see the actual grid spots being raised, having the footprints appear when you simply hold a character, no matter the distance from the table, would have made moving around a bit of a quicker process, as the footprints are much more easily visible than the grid that is raised. You can play the game seated, but you will need to lean forward to move pieces around the board. Because of this, it really does feel like you're playing on a real board game. You can place characters on circular stands on the table to display more information about them. You can do this with enemies as well, but the easiest way to see how much health, shield, and action points a character has left is by looking at the side of their stand, as it is displayed here. When a character has been selected, their attacks are displayed in the form of cards that are just in front of you. Each one does require a certain amount of action points to be played, and some cost more than others, so mixing and matching attacks, depending on where enemy units are on the board, is a must. To actually play a card, you pick it up and place it above the character. Each character has their own unique attacks. Some have close quarters, some have ranged, some have area of effect spells, some can switch positions with an enemy, some can give the enemy damage over time, such as a bleed effect, and some can even spawn another creature that will fight by your side. There really is so many different attacks you can use, and it's so satisfying when you pull off a great combo of cards that deal a lot of damage to many enemies at once. Like when you switch places with an enemy, which puts them in a group, which can then be hit with an area of effect spell. To end a character's turn, you play the rest card. If they have action points left, this will be converted to health and shield, so defense can can certainly be a form of tactic in this game. You're constantly scanning the table for ways to bring all your characters' cards together in the most effective way possible, and it's so much fun for the entire game, especially as the combat never gets boring or repetitive, due to new cards being unlocked for each character to use. Each character won't even unlock all of their abilities by the end of the game, so you really do have to give a bit of thought when choosing a new attack card. Further preventing the combat from becoming stale is the fact that the board's locations often change up the way you approach them and play. At one point you will be stopping enemies from taking X to the top of the board, and at another point, one of your characters gets chained to another person you meet on your travels. This person is not commanded by you and will attack enemies by themselves. When they move, the chain forces your character to move with them, so you have to be wary of their surroundings when you play each turn. These variations to how each of the boards play forces you to adapt new strategies, which keeps you so engaged in the game at all times. But that's not all that the game does to keep your attention. Quite often you will be presented an event where you must place a party member down onto different places on the board for them to perform an action. Some characters are better at certain action than others, so it's best to place a character down who raises more stars on that action. When a character is placed on one of these, they will receive a new card. This costs points to use, but doing so will give you a dice to roll. What numbers they land on will be added as stars. When all the stars are filled up, the action will be performed. Now you can cheat when it comes to what numbers the dice will land on, as you can simply hold down the T button to keep hold of the dice, and can then use the force of the table to make them turn to whichever numbers you want. Only when the T button is released do the dice fall, and the numbers get counted. Now I see this as both a good and bad thing. Sure, it certainly removes the excitement of luck to be had in the game, but on the other hand, it allows strategy to be the main focus throughout the game and puts you in control of everything. The game does its very best to put you in control of everything else too, as you can even shape how the story unfolds, and ultimately ends. The game has a surprising amount of choices. These are selected by simply placing a character down on a spot you want, and a story path will be chosen. For example, at the beginning of the game, you can select which ship you want to steal. There is usually no right or wrong choice, as the game keeps on progressing no matter what you choose, but the main focus of the game is trying to clear your group's name, as they are wanted for a murder they didn't commit. This begins your grand adventure across the seas, where you will travel to many different islands, that each contain a mini story, and depending on your choices, you will often see the result of your actions displayed as a newspaper article at the back of the table. Between island trips, you'll also be able to engage in some chatter with your party members. These really are bite-sized glimpses of the backstories though, so don't expect to grow too attached to them throughout your adventure. Immersing you even more in each of the island's locations is the environmental sounds. Seagulls are heard as you travel over the seas, and water is heard dripping in a damp cave. It may not sound like much, but it does draw your attention even more to the board. Lighting can also drastically change the mood of the board. It may be bright and lit up, or dark and shadowy. The visuals in this game really are amazing. You can choose to play the game from one of 3 difficulties: easy, medium and hard. My first playthrough was on medium, and I did find it incredibly easy. I only failed a mission twice, and that was because I didn't listen to the new rule that would fail the mission. It's actually quite hard to die on the table too, as each character can resurrect each other if they are close to them. I certainly suggest that you play on the hardest difficulty to begin with, if you have a lot of experience with these types of games. The game also comes with a multiplayer mode, but unfortunately I wasn't able to record footage for it, as the game doesn't allow it, so I'll do my best to explain the rules. The mode is for 2-player local play. One person plays with the headset on and is the villain, and the other person plays using the TV, and have a party of 3 heroes. At the start, both get to choose their ability cards. The villain must sneak around the map and activate altars to get stronger, and it's up to the TV player to kill them before the villain gets strong. The VR player sees the whole map, and the TV player's view is limited to squares around their heroes. Overall, the mode is a welcomed addition, but I doubt many will play with it for too long, as there's only one map to battle on. The main game took me around 3 hours to beat, but because there's so many choices to make, it makes it a very replayable game. I can't show the trophies yet because they wasn't online when I made the review. When they're up, I'll give my thoughts on them in the comments below this video. I absolutely love this game. I was so immersed at all times, and it was the first time I've experienced this exact type of game in VR. Not only is the combat fun, thanks to new abilities being unlocked at a very good pace, but when the board springs to life and new areas are presented to you, it's an amazing visual experience. Now, I don't say this often, but I really hope we get DLC, or better yet, a whole new game in this series, as the actual length of the game is extremely on the short side for this genre of game, but the fact that you don't unlock each of the character's abilities on your first playthrough, and you're constantly being hit with choices in the game, makes it a highly replayable experience. Even more so because at the beginning of the game, you start with 4 characters, and must only choose 3 to bring on your adventure, so on a second playthrough, you could have a whole different character in your party. Overall, if you like this genre of role-playing strategy games, this is definitely a must-play. I was a bit skeptical when I first saw the trailer, but after playing it, it really did exceed my expectations. It really is a brilliant game.
Oh, hello there. Oh, my. Feels like I've been asleep for years.
I honestly didn't think I'd enjoy this game as much as what I did. I really wasn't expecting quite so many choices to make, but now you have a choice. If you enjoyed this video, give it a thumbs up to please beep, or if you didn't enjoy it, give it a thumbs down to give more power to Morpheus. Time to choose, Game Master.